Hi, it's December 19th, and this is the 19th story in A Story a Day Till Christmas. This one is called The Holy Night. It was Christmas Day, and all the folks had driven to church except Grandmother and I. I believe we were all alone in the house. We had not been permitted to go along because one of us was way too old and the other was way too young. And we were sad, both of us, because we had not been taken to early Mass to hear the singing and to see the Christmas candles. But as we sat there in our loneliness, Grandmother began to tell a story. There was a man, she said, who went out in the dark to borrow live coals to kindle a fire. He went from hut to hut and knocked. "Dear friends, help me," he said. "My wife has just given birth to a child, and I must make a fire to warm her and the little one." But it was way in the night, and all the people were asleep. No one replied. The man walked and walked. At last he saw a gleam of fire a long way off. Then he went in that direction, and saw that a fire was burning in the open. A lot of sheep were sleeping around the fire, and an old shepherd sat and watched over the flock. When the man who wanted to borrow the fire came up to the sheep, he saw that 3 big dogs lay asleep at the shepherd's feet. All 3 woke when the man approached and opened their great jaws as though they wanted to bark, but not a sound was heard. The man noticed that the hair on the back stood up and that their sharp white teeth glistened in the firelight. They dashed towards him. He felt that one of them bit at his leg and one at his hand, and that one clung to his throat. But their jaws and teeth didn't obey them. The man didn't suffer in the least harm. Now the man wished to go farther to get what he needed, but the sheep laid back to back and so close to one another that he couldn't pass them. Then the man stepped on their backs and walked over them and up to the fire, and not one of the animals awoke or moved. Thus far, Grandmother had been allowed to narrate without interruption, but at this point I couldn't help but breaking in. Why didn't they do it, Grandma?" I asked. "That you shall hear in a moment," said Grandma, and went on with her story. When the man was almost reached the fire, the shepherd looked up. He was a surly old man who was unfriendly and harsh towards human beings, and when he saw the strange man coming, he seized the long spiked staff, which he had always held in his hand when he tended his flock, and threw it at him. The staff came right toward the man, but before it reached him, it turned off to one side and whizzed past him far out into the meadow. When Grandmother had got this far, I interrupted her again. "Grandma, why didn't the stick hurt the man?" Grandma did not bother about answering me, but continued her story. Now the man came up to the shepherd and said to him, "Good man, help me and lend me a little fire. My wife has just given birth to a child, and I must make a fire to warm her and the little one." The shepherd would rather have said no, but when he pondered that the dogs couldn't hurt the man, and the sheep had not run from him, and that the staff had not wished to strike him, he was a little afraid, and dared not deny the man that which he asked. "Take as much as you need," said the man. But then the fire was nearly burnt out. There were no logs or branches left, only a big heap of live coals, and the stranger had neither spade nor shovel, wherein he could carry the red-hot coals. When the shepherd saw this, he again said, "Take as much as you need," and he was glad the man wouldn't be able to take away any of the coals. But the man stooped and picked up coals from the ashes with his bare hands and laid them in his mantle. And he didn't burn his hands when he touched them, nor did the coals scorch his mantle, but he carried them away as if they had been nuts or apples. But here the storyteller was interrupted for the 3rd time. "Grandma, why wouldn't the coals burn the man?" "That you shall hear," said Grandmother, and went on. And when the shepherd, who was such a cruel and hard-hearted man, saw this, he began to wonder to himself, "What kind of night is this, that the dogs do not bite, the sheep are not scared, the staff not kill, or the fire scorch?" He called the stranger back and said to him, "What kind of night is this? And how does it happen that all things show you compassion?" Then the man said, "I cannot tell you, if you yourself do not see it." And he wished to go his way, that he might soon make fire and warm his wife and child. But the shepherd did not want to lose sight of this man before he found out what all this might portend. He got up and followed the man till they came to the place where he lived. Then the shepherd saw that the man didn't have so much as a hut to dwell in, but that his wife and babe were lying in a mountain cave, where there was nothing except cold, naked stone walls. But the shepherd thought that perhaps the poor innocent child might freeze to death there in the cave, and although he was a hard man, he was touched, and thought he would like to help it. And he loosened his knapsack from his shoulder, took from it soft white sheepskin, gave it to the strange man, and said that he should let the child sleep on it. Just as soon as he showed that he, too, could be merciful, his eyes were opened, and he saw that what he had not been able to see before, and heard what he could not have heard before. He saw that all around him stood a ring of little silver-winged angels, and each held a stringed instrument, and all sang in loud tones that tonight the Savior was born, who should redeem the world from its sins. Then he understood how all things were so happy this night that they didn't want to do anything wrong. And it was not only around the shepherd that there were angels, but he saw them everywhere. He sat inside the cave, they sat outside on the mountain, and they flew under the heavens. They came marching in with great companies, and as they passed, they paused and cast a glance at the child. There was such jubilation and such gladness and songs and play, and all this he saw in the dark night, whereas before he could not make out anything. He was so happy because his eyes had been opened that he fell upon his knees and thanked God. Here grandmother sighed and said, "What that shepherd saw, we might also see, for the angels fly down from heaven every Christmas Eve, if we could only see them." Then grandmother laid her hand on my head and said, "You must remember this, for it is true as that I see you and you see me. It is not revealed by the light of lamps or candles. It does not depend upon sun and moon. But that which is needful is that we have such eyes we can see God's glory."